What's up, guys? Back at it with another video. So look, today we're going to be talking about the potential liability that you can run into from having an Airbnb through an arbitrage model. So what that is that you're going to you're going to rent an apartment on a yearly rate. And then the arbitrage part comes in whenever you take something from one market and you sell it on another market. And that's going to be a nightly rate. So if you're in the Pittsburgh area, according to AirDNA, which is a good way to be able to gauge your market and find out how much nights are usually, or how much rentals are going for in your area, it's around $120 for a whole house in the Pittsburgh area, right? So that $1,200 a month that you're paying for your lease payment is going to be around a little bit over $3,000 a month whenever you're renting it out nightly on Airbnb, assuming that you're at 100% occupancy. So, and then you're gonna have cleaning fees on top. So don't think that the money is just gonna stop there. It's actually really good money if you do it right. All right, so the first thing that you want to be worried about, and the biggest liability that I see inside that model is whenever you don't communicate with the landlord that you want to do an STR. If he has no idea that you're trying to do a short-term rental, as soon as people start coming in and they can tell that you're subleasing the apartment to other people, at that point, you're in violation of the lease. Okay, so he can get you out of there. You're going to lose the money that you put down on the apartment. You're going to lose all of the furnishing. I mean, you know, you can take them with you, but you're going to lose a lot of money. And most importantly, you're going to waste a lot of time. You know, whenever you could just be straight up with your landlord, let them know what you're looking for, and find a landlord that's a good fit for you. So that's the number one liability that you want to look out for, is just the liability of not having communication with the person who you're trying to do business with at that point. Next, you need to be worried about having money put up, because you know there's going to be issues that are going to come up. So if you're using your last $5,500 in order to get in the Airbnb or really start any business, if you're using the last bit of money that you have, it makes for a great story, but honestly, it's a lot more stressful than what it needs to be. You could just wait another, if you were able to save $5,500, then you could probably wait another 6 months and get you another $2,000, $2,500, $3,000, get you something so you can have a little cushion. Because even though you're renting, if a problem pops up and let's say the furnace goes out, or a guest breaks the window, or anything like that happens, just anything random, as a business owner, the next guest does not care that you didn't have money to get the furnace fixed. He doesn't care that it's not your furnace. It's actually the person who owns the building. You're going to have to front those costs and get things fixed expeditiously. And if I were you, I would communicate that with your landlord before you even get started in the process. Make sure that he's okay with that. Figure out some kind of verbiage or terms where you might be able to put a clause into your lease where you can say, you know, if the furnace goes out, I'm okay with paying the money in between. So a lot of times the landlord works with an HVAC guy, or he has a certain company that he deals with, and he probably gets better prices because he does a large volume of business with them. Now that company probably isn't going to be ready to come over right away to switch out that unit. Now, what I would do is I would try to work a deal out with the landlord where I'll pay for the whole thing up front, and I'll pay the extra cost that it takes to get it done now. But you have to pick up what it would have cost originally, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, there's just some details, and you want to think about what happens whenever the unexpected happens. Do I have money for that? Have I worked it out with the landlord? Can I get in touch with them? How long will it take to get these things sorted out? The next thing is locks, man. So this is something else I've noticed. A lot of hosts who are doing illegal Airbnbs, and what I mean by illegal is that they didn't tell the person who owns the house or the building, the apartment complex, wherever they're at, that they were doing Airbnb. A lot of times they don't change out the lock because it's against, you know, their lease to change the lock so that maintenance can't get in or whatever. But if you have an actual key lock, you're exposing yourself to a huge amount of liability. I'm actually going to do it'll be a reaction style video of a news story of a guest who had a bad experience with that. And basically, when the news went to the owner of the complex and asked, like, hey, there was an Airbnb guest inside of, let's say, apartment 204, the owner of the apartment's like, yo, what are you talking about? We don't allow subleasing on our leases. So that's the reason why the host while the guy who owned the Airbnb had an actual key. You know what I'm saying? A lot of liability. But I'll talk about that in the next video. Okay, so you want to make sure that you have your locks right. I recommend an electronic deadbolt, preferably Bluetooth. That way you can change codes, and you want to use some kind of hub so you can remotely change codes if you need to. It'll come in handy, trust me. Maybe we'll do the video after that on the reason why you want to have a hub on your lock system. But all right, so moving right along here, the next one is your neighbors, man. So I had bought a house over in Brighton Heights community, part of Pittsburgh. Turns out all of Brighton Heights is not created the same. Some parts are pretty rough. Turned out that part was pretty rough. I thought I knew what I was doing, but by the time I had bought the house and then actually got over there, started doing construction and spending time at the property, it was crazy. I would have got terrible reviews. So I hurried up, sold the house. Luckily the pandemic, well, not luckily the pandemic came along. Luckily the interest rates went down and the property values went up. So I was able to get out of that at a profit. But yeah, so now if I was buying a house or doing an arbitrage unit, I would take time out of my day and stop past around the time the kids get out of school and maybe hang out for a couple hours, take care of some work in the car. Stop over at night, you know what I'm saying, around like 7 to 9 p.m. and then from like 9 to 11 p.m. Just spend a little bit of time in the area and the community, get a feel for it, because all places aren't really good for short-term rentals. So you want to be very careful about where you're setting up, because you're going to put this investment in. You're going to put your money in. You're going to put your time, most importantly, into it. You want to make sure that you're doing it right. You're not just getting all, excited on emotion and running off and, losing a bunch of money. All right, so the next is the people in your complex. I've lived in a few apartment complexes in life, right? And I have 3 friends who are doing Airbnb arbitrage models, and none of them are inside apartment complexes. None of them are in apartment buildings. They either are in duplexes where they have both units in the duplex, or they have single family houses, right? The reason why you want to do that is because there's so much more liability if you have someone right next to your guest. So if you're in an apartment complex and you don't control that apartment that's above, below, beside, or I guess that would be everywhere, or even directly across the hall from them. Let's say that you're inside an apartment building and the person who lives directly across the hall from your Airbnb, he smokes cigarettes, right, in his apartment. Every time he opens up his door, a whole cloud of cigarette smoke comes out. If he does that while your guest is coming out, potentially they could complain and say, oh, my allergies were bothering me, I need a refund, It's just, I could imagine that the liability will go crazy. I used to live in an apartment complex that literally there were 2 people who lived there who had been there for years, like 10, 15 years, right? Don't ask me why you would stay in an apartment complex and rent for 10 to 15 years, but that's what they decided to do. So everyone who would park in these 2 parking spaces, like the closest 2 to their door, their car would get keyed. So whether or not you had somebody, let's say these people just left out and went out to work on a normal day. If I had company and they parked in that parking space, unknowingly, whenever those people would get home, they would key whatever car was in the parking space. Complexes are just too close, there's too many people, and people start doing stupid shit. So I would definitely make sure that you're not in an apartment complex or a townhome community. Preferably if it would be like a duplex where you have both duplexes, or even if it is a building that you control all of the units in it. It'll just make it a lot better, even when you're dealing with long-term renters compared to your short-term rentals. Because I have other friends who have a duplex, and their long-term renter on the top floor has been making their business on the bottom floor go to shit, because they keep on having it's not having parties. They just, they have their boys over and they drink every Friday night. But it's killing their Airbnb reviews, because, the Airbnb guests don't want to hear that. All right, so that's some liability to think about. I would definitely recommend the arbitrage model, but just like any business, do not go out and get in the business if you only have that $5,500 that it takes to start it. You're going to run into problems. There's going to be something. No matter what business you get into, there's definitely going to be some expenditures that you were not planning on. You want to make sure that you have a little bit of a cushion, because as fast as you get into it, you can be out of it. Okay, so just make sure you're doing good business. And until the next time, this is Dave, and I'll catch y'all later.